Alright, but seriously, where can I get me one of those goats? Because I want one. Hello interwebs, I hope you're all doing well, and welcome to my review of the, don't know why I'm holding my face like this, the latest review of the newest Marvel movie, this time Thor, Love and Thunder, directed by Taika Waititi. And I think the reason that I kind of held my face there for a second, because like, yes, I am back on camera for this review. I still have the weird face things that I'm doing to hide my face. It's still cooking a little bit longer underneath here, though I am starting to see things starting to heal up, and I'm actually very excited to show you what my new face looks like, but just bear with me a little while longer. You get the crazy looking costume for just a little bit, but that kind of fits this film, doesn't it? See how I transition it back? Because I'm a professional. Because let's talk about this movie. I gotta be honest with you, I was really excited for this one going in because I've been kind of up and down on phase 4 of Marvel, particularly with all the influx of Marvel Disney Plus TV shows, which have kind of been, especially lately, very hit or miss and kind of been dragging me down on my feeling on Marvel as a whole. So I was really looking forward to this film to kind of pick me up, especially because I really love Taika Waititi. I really enjoyed Thor Ragnarok for the most part. I had structural issues with it, considering like Hela was very off to the side of that movie, and it was clear that Taika was much more interested in telling the Planet Hulk storyline there. But I did enjoy both sides of that film, even though they were very disparate. And so coming into this one, I was like, okay, Taika kind of has a full plate to deal with. He kind of has to do with the Guardians of the Galaxy stuff a little bit, but then he can kind of focus on exactly what he wants to do and not to sort of deal with the Phase 3 Marvel setup stuff and the Ragnarok stuff that he was sort of like saddled with last time. And just knowing how much I like Taika's stuff generally overall, like all of his films and TV shows that he's helped produce and direct over the last few years have all been pretty solid to freaking amazing. So I was really excited to come into this one, and I just have to say I am kind of disappointed, and I feel like that's because I put a lot of expectations onto it. But even if I kind of try to decouple my expectations into putting this as a Taika Waititi film, I kind of have to say I felt like it was very paint by the numbers in a lot of ways, and it kind of just continually speaks to that Marvel fatigue that I've been sort of feeling as we've gotten further and further into Phase 4. That being said, I will say there are moments in this film that feel uniquely Taika, and when those moments shine through, they do shine through, and I absolutely love them. But overall, just the plot of this film and the way we are going through things just never really feel like it was greater than the sum of its parts. And I just sort of felt a little bit like, okay, yeah, we're gonna get to this next section, and then there's gonna be a big fight, and then we'll get to the next section, and there'll be a big fight, and the villain will monologue, and it just kind of was going through all those beats, and it never really did anything particularly special outside of the like dash of zanity that Taika adds to all of his films that I really enjoy, but it never coalesced into anything more than that. I'm kind of speaking generally here, and I'm going to talk specifics in a second, but it's kind of hard because I feel like when I'm going to go into specifics, I'm going to talk about a lot of things that I really like. Like, I like this specific thing, this specific thing. It's just kind of a general vibe that I got from the film that was like, here's the beats, you got the villain monologue, you got Thor going off to save these kids, you got these things going on, but it just never gelled anything bigger, and it just sort of felt like, okay, we're going through the motions of this plot. It just never came together. Let me start talking a little bit more about specifics here. Christian Bale as Gore is absolutely fantastic. Let me just say that right up front. He only gets like 2 real scenes to shine. He's throughout the whole film, and most of his scenes he's just sort of standard villain of the week Marvel villain. But the moments where he does get to shine, where he gets to kind of control the scenery, and again, there's only 2 real scenes of it, he is wonderful. And I kind of wish we had gotten more of that. The bit where, and I'm gonna go full into spoilers here, like the bit where he is just playing with the kids and he like twists off that like little creature's head and just fucking with them. And then also the moments where he's like monologuing at Thor to call Stormbringer was all just, I adored all of that. That being said, swing back to Thor though, Chris Hemsworth plays the part really well here. There's some really great moments between him and Jane, but their chemistry never really gels completely for me. I never really bought them as like a really strong couple, and so there are moments where they do sort of profess their love for each other and they kind of go through those beats. They work and they're functional, but they never hit for me, and that kind of extends a little bit to Chris Hemsworth as Thor throughout this piece. I love Chris Hemsworth as Thor. Like, as soon as he found that sort of comedic edge to the character starting in Thor Ragnarok, I think he's really nailed this character, and that hasn't changed here. But there's just something kind of perfunctory in a lot of the scenes with him. And I feel like that is most felt in the early Act 1 of the film when he is stuck with the Guardians of the Galaxy. And you can very much tell that that was the part of the movie that Taika Waititi just wanted to get through, that he was just sort of like dealing with it, because none of those scenes in the early top of the film felt all that intriguing to me. And I was really kind of looking forward to like seeing what Thor was going to do with the Guardians, but honestly it just kind of sped through them. The pacing of those beats just felt like this movie was just moving, clipping right along and just trying to get through that as fast as humanly possible to get to the stuff that Taika really cared about. And it honestly just kind of left me cold for the rest of the film. And the film picks up as it goes, especially into its second act. Kind of loses it a little bit towards the end, but it does get better as it goes. But those first few acts, that first few scenes, I just was sort of like, wow, it kind of just started me off a little bit lukewarm. Not bad, just lukewarm. And let's jump over to Jane here, because again, on paper, everything that she has is great. I actually really like the depiction of her dealing with cancer and her sort of falling more and more into it. It is very much, and I say this as someone who's had people that I care about go through these sort of things, it was very much like a Hollywood version of going through chemotherapy. I mean, not that she didn't look great at the end of the movie when she was dealing with that, but it's kind of hard to depict like what that would be, like going through chemotherapy would be in a kind of fun Marvel movie. So I get why they didn't go fully that route, but there was a little bit of like sanitization of that. And I understand why to a degree. And she performs it well, and her frustration is performed well throughout the piece. And her moments where she gets to shine and like have fun as the mighty Thor were also great. And her final denouement to the villain, which is like, you can call me Dr. Jane Foster, like all that was, I was like, dang, okay, I'm here for it. But then again, her chemistry with Thor just never really clicked. And they have good moments on paper, but it just never gets to be more than the sum of its parts. And that continues on to when we get to Valkyrie. Valkyrie was one of my favorite parts of Thor Ragnarok. I love Tessa Thompson. She's always fantastic, and she does a solid job here. But again, she's never really given a ton of moments to shine. And it just kind of was like, oh, okay, she's here. And she gets a few good lines here and there. Same thing with Korg. But they never really get moments of like, yeah, these are their moments, like she kind of had in Thor Ragnarok. Like when she was fighting on the, I forget what it's called, the bridge, the Rainbow Bridge in Asgard in Thor Ragnarok, like those moments where she's like flipping the daggers and stuff, all that's great. You never really get a moment like that here for her, and that kind of leaves me, again, feeling lukewarm on her. There's nothing I can point to like, that was bad, that bothers me. It just was never a moment of like, yeah, that was great. And that extends a lot to the action sequences. Like the whole bit that they sold with them going to face off with Zeus, again, felt perfunctory. The actor who's playing Zeus, I forget his name, I know he's a fairly well-known actor, but for some reason it's just blanking on me in the moment. She chews the scenery, but the scene seems to go on just a little bit too long, and I don't really kind of enjoy it all that much. One thing I did like, though, I was kind of uncomfortable when Thor gets his clothing knocked off and everyone's sort of oogling at him, and all the women in the crowd are like, this is impressive, and Jane and Valkyrie are also kind of enjoying it. And believe me, I don't mind looking at Chris Hemsworth bod, and I've always been someone who's argued that it's not the problem to objectify someone within a movie, man or woman, it's just the ubiquitousness of that being placed on women most of the time. So, and that was kind of fixed for me, by the way, when Thor literally says, oh, I was fine with it, it was cool. I would have liked him to have been asked consent, because it's not cool to make someone naked without their consent, which clearly in this scene wasn't, and that was kind of the joke, so there's still a little bit of underlying uncomfortability for me, but I did at least like the fact that Thor made note of the fact that he was cool with being naked in front of people and wasn't really bothered by it. So I at least like that playing into that. That was a nice little note to sort of add into that. But again, going back to the Zeus scene and the God scene, it just felt overlong. It was fine. It didn't knock my socks off, but it wasn't bad. And that just kind of just pervades this film, doesn't it? It's okay, but never transcendentary. One thing, too, that I'll mention, it was nice to see Sif pop back up in this film, but I was very sad that she got quickly sidelined in the movie. I really love Sif, and she's just been done dirty by the Marvel Cinematic Universe in general. I loved her when she appeared in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and when she appeared in Loki and the small bit she's had in the Thor films, and I wish she had more to do. Just poor Sif. Just always awesome character and just constantly gets shafted. One thing though, and step with me into Jessie's queer corner for a minute. I know some of you don't really want to hear me rant about the gay stuff, but guess what? I want to rant about the gay stuff because we kind of need to talk about it with this film. I am at a point right now in my feeling about representation where I'm kind of like, screw Disney for this constant, just like shallow, oh, we're gonna have our first gay character ever, LGBTQ representation. They've gotten a little bit better about it throughout their recent films, like we got the kiss in Buzz Lightyear, the trans characters just wearing the trans flag at his local CVS and Baymax, and the parents in Doctor Strange, but it's all fairly background, and I at least appreciate that Disney seems to not be backing down from, you know, cutting these out like they would have in years prior for like international markets or for other people. So I at least am appreciating that, but in this film, it just got to that point where I just kept getting annoyed by the fact that they kept alluding to queerness, but not actually stating it and not making it very clear so the audience can't miss it. What I mean by that is, we have Valkyrie make reference to the fact that her lover was her potential girlfriend or someone who she saw as a girlfriend in one quick one-off line, but it is one quick one-off line, very similar to how Loki mentioned that he was bisexual in his series. Very quick and blink and you'll miss it sort of thing. And that perturbs me more so based on the fact that this movie was initially sold to us that Valkyrie needed to find her queen. Like, if you go way back when this movie was first announced, I think Taika himself was there when he said at Comic-Con, like, she needs to find her queen. And that never happens in this movie. There's a one-off line, and I'm just, you sold me that this was gonna be the queer movie, and you didn't give it to me. So that kind of bugged me. And I've seen different people have different interpretations of the scene. There is a movie where there's the character of Axel Heimdall's child mentioned that he goes by Axel now as opposed to another name. And Thor kind of jokes about that for a moment, and it read to me as a dead naming moment. Like Thor's like, oh, you need to have this name because that's the name that you were given. And there are some people that when I mentioned that on Twitter said like, oh, it was an immigrant joke, not a trans joke. But I also saw people online reading the character as trans. We don't know for sure, and I think that ambiguity is part of what bugs me most. Like, for example, I'm putting up on screen right now a tweet by someone who explained the representation as an immigrant joke, especially considering Taika's background. That would make a lot of sense. But my issue is that it's not entirely clear and actually could be read that Axel is a trans character. And even if you read it that way, there is a positive arc in the film for Thor ultimately coming to accept Axel's name as Axel. So there is that, even in both readings of it being an immigration joke and a trans joke, a positive arc. But I just think it would have read better if it had just been made explicitly clear whether the character was trans or not, so that that initial joke where it was possibly read as dead naming or not accepting even his cultural background or things like that, I think it just could have been a more clear joke and more targeted joke in both directions. Again, I can't really critique it from a cultural stance, but I can critique it from a trans stance. But I still even feel like if you just made it really clear and made that sort of moment just read a little bit better, that ultimately would have assuaged my direction either way. And I think that's really where my problem comes down to. It's just the ambiguity with either the representation or the fact that it's not representation of a trans person versus just making it explicit about the culture that this character is coming from. It read weird to me to just kind of allude to it, but not, and kind of leave this open for interpretation where people will say like, oh, it's just an immigrant joke, not a trans joke. And here I'm sort of sitting like, well, I don't really know. And then there is one joke in the film where Korg is dating another person from his society who also is a guy, and it's a very quick, very fast joke, and the joke is, oh, he's dating a dude that looks like him with a mustache. And I was kind of like, oh, not sure I like the joke where it's like, oh, he's dating a guy, isn't that kind of funny? I was just like, again, it's one of those, like, I understand it doesn't feel like, I can understand how it could not be read as homophobia. I don't think that was the intention. I think Taika is a very queer-friendly person, but it still has those vibes that I'm like, the humor's coming from him dating a dude with a mustache. Not kind of cool with that. And just to be really clear here, the things that are bothering me about this is not that it's necessarily bad or awful or that I need queerness front and center in every single one of my films, though I wouldn't be opposed to that, but I don't necessarily need it. My issue is that there's so many things that are allusions to queerness in this film, especially since this film was sold to us as the queer movie where the queer person was going to find her queen. And yet, even still, despite all of those potential chances throughout this film, it's still fairly background and easily missable for those who aren't looking for it or don't want to look at it. And with the fact that we are seeing so much vilification of even the most passing of LGBTQ representation nowadays, I have to just say, we need it to be front and center and in your face, not these shallow little one-off things. So, do I need every character to be gay? Do I need everything to be about queerness? No. Again, not against it, but I don't need it. But if you're going to allude to it, then do it. Don't just do these little dancing around things that are just ultimately frustrating to everybody. Anyways, that was my queer corner. I had to state it. It's just where I was coming from, and it did rub me a little bit the wrong way, especially when I'm just at a point where, like, if people are just gonna whine about, like, literally a trans dude showing up in the show Baymax for literally 2 seconds and whining and complaining about it, at this point, just screw them. We need to have representation, and Disney, you are well behind the ball on that, and it's honestly starting to get very frustrating. Do better, and I appreciate that you're pushing forward, and that you're taking flack for it because you're the biggest company, but at this point, you can do better, and screw the people who are going to whine and moan about it anyways, because they're going to whine and moan even if it's the most perfunctory of representation. Anyways, I will end that now. That's my rant for now. At the end of the day, though, this movie was good. I enjoyed it. I know I've been complaining a lot about it, and I know I was feeling down on it. I enjoyed myself watching this film. But there was never a movie where I was excited about it. And I was really kind of hoping that this was going to be the Marvel movie to make me excited. And it's starting to worry me that we're at a point with Marvel where I'm like, am I ever going to feel that excitement again that I had when I went into something like Infinity War? And I know Infinity War is the high bar. But I remember feeling that, like, building excitement all the way through the Infinity Saga. And I really haven't felt that here, even for individual films. And I'm just sort of at this point, like, maybe this is the Marvel fatigue finally setting in for me. I've ridden it out a little bit longer than probably some others, but I'm starting to feel it. And I think that we really need a jolt to the system. And I was really hoping this movie was going to be it. And sadly, I don't feel like it was. So I enjoyed this movie. I liked it. Didn't love it. Certainly stuff that I will go back and watch, certainly for Christian Bale, and just spending more time with Chris Hemsworth, because I do enjoy him. But at the end of the day, I was just kind of a little bit disappointed. Not upset, but disappointed. That's my thoughts on Thor, Love and Thunder. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though, down below. Were you upset about me about LGBTQ stuff? Did you like this film a lot more than I did? Were you more disappointed? I'd love to hear all that. But beyond all of that, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you, as always, my friends, live long and prosper.